Hello there, and welcome to Sweet Child of Time and One of My Stories as we cover our continued coverage of the Netflix series 100 Years of Solitude. Today is episode 7, so we're deep into it. Let me bring in that One of My Stories. It's Lindsey Dunn. Ahoy there, Lindsey.
Ahoy, Steve.
Ahoy. Let's see. I don't want to say buen dia because we say that a lot. ¿Cómo estás? Bueno? Malo?
Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
That was French, wasn't it? Muy
Muy
bien.
bien?
I thought it was bueno.
Oh, well, we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, this is off to a banger. We don't know. Lindsey, what is going on tonight with episode 7? How are you liking this?
Well, I really love it. And we sort of had a mini conversation through the DMs about the title name. And about
that's right.
The title about Arcadio and the liberal paradise. And that paradise word really jumped out at me as a huge dark tie-in. And this episode is all about somebody selling a version of paradise and then finding out that it wasn't as great as you thought, which is a direct tie-in to Dark, I think, with Paradise. So that was cool. That was cool finding out that the title had the word paradise in it.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and it kind of flew past my head until you, I think you put paradise in quotes or something along those lines, or you pointed it out to me. I was like, oh, of course. And then, I think about, their journey, and then I think about, how do you get to the liberal paradise? The song that we did together. So
how do you get to liberal paradise? I don't know. Not this way. You don't leave Arcadio in charge.
But yeah, as a whole, I'm going to go against the grain here a little bit. This, I still enjoy the show. I still enjoy the characters and the tracking shots and everything. But this was my least favorite episode so far because it focuses a lot on, there's a big action sequence towards the end. And there's a lot of fighting, a lot of war. And so these are things that I generally don't enjoy watching in shows. So for me personally, I didn't enjoy this as much as I should have. So this is for me, I watched it a couple of times, but if I was rewatching the series, I think I'd probably watch this in fast speed or something because I don't appreciate those shots as much as I should. And I realize that I'm in the wrong because when they do these long tracking shots, especially with war and there's a lot of action and there's stunt people and there's coordination and there's explosions and set pieces, and you're doing all this in a very timed, coordinated fashion. It's tough to do, and it's it's wonderful. But for me, I much prefer a long tracking shot just of somebody walking through town and, oh, look over there, there's the baker and he's baking some bread and that kind of tracking shot. I don't know,
this
all
man is baking bread.
I just prefer I guess more sereneness, I suppose. So all the action and the that, maybe that's why I didn't like the SNL movie so much, the Saturday Night movie, because it was very fast paced and everybody was freaking out and running around in action and stuff. And I don't know, that's how this episode was. It was a very fast-paced episode. So if you're into war and, like I said, stunts, explosions, they have it all in this episode.
Okay, let's poke at that for just a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Because last week, towards the end of the episode, there was another battle scene, and you really enjoyed it. So I wanna examine it, and that was the scene with Aureliano when they break into the school that had been reacquisitioned by the army, and they were kind of taking it over. So why did that work for you and this didn't?
Because that was it was nighttime shot. It was very quiet. They were sneaking over the roofs, and they started at the ground. They climbed up to the roof. It was very quiet. All you were focusing on was them. It wasn't like there was a bunch of stuff happening. It was 2 or 3 guys. And then they did their thing and they came out in the street, and it was I don't know. It wasn't distracting. It wasn't like my eye was looking for a focal point, because the focal point was always presented in that scene that we were talking, that you just mentioned. And plus it was a nighttime scene too. So that gives it a
Well, it was
different kind of
also
mood too.
done, it was also done silently with music. It wasn't any
Mm-hmm.
dialogue. The noises of the battle were muted, and it had just a soundtrack on top of it. Whereas this battle scene was more like loud and lots of stuff
Mm-hmm.
going on, which could be a sensory overload. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really liked this episode, but it wasn't so much because of the battle scenes. It was because of the emotional stakes of the characters,
Mm-hmm.
especially our mother, Ursula. There was a lot of just the stakes of what was happening. I felt very invested in what was happening to our family. And that's something that hasn't been present at the beginning of the show. I was, you'll remember I was very detached from these characters.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it was all pretty boring. I wasn't really that interested. I mean, I was interested enough to keep going, but I didn't find the story. I didn't care that much about the characters. But now that we've gone through all this stuff, I find that I'm more invested in what's happening to our main characters. So I think that was what I liked about it. It wasn't so much the battle scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that kind of dominated my thoughts because that's how the episode. I mean, it was like midway through the episode, we catch up with Aureliano, and then at the end of the episode, the big ending is with Arcadio. So that kind of like dominates my mind, like is how the episode ended. I guess I want to talk about the book too, though. I want to move on and mention a little something about that because, this is a TV show based on a book, and Wheel of Time was a TV show based on a book. Except for you could not exactly read the book along while you were watching the TV show Wheel of Time. Very much impossible to do because a lot of stuff was changed, a lot of stuff, characters were left out, things were simplified for television. Whereas this book, it's really easy to follow along with the show and read along with it. And there's an advantage to doing so in this episode. And that's another fault, not a fault, but another reason that I fault this episode a little bit. I guess that is the right word. Because as I was reading this chapter, you really get into Ursula's head and you get into Arcadio's head and you realize a lot of things that I believe aren't really shown on the screen. And, maybe that's so that people can interpret things differently. But I don't know. I think there's a value in when we discuss these scenes, like talking about what was happening in these characters' books during what was happening in these characters' heads during these times that we don't see.
So it's almost like a Benjamin Button effect.
How so?
Well, our enjoyment of the show is going the opposite direction. I, am enjoying it more as we go along, and you seem to be enjoying it less.
Yeah, it probably sounds like I am. I'm not. If all the other episodes were like, A's and B's, this one's just simply a B minus. That's all. I mean, it's not like I hate it. It just falls last on the list. Something's got to fall last, and this one does so far.
I suppose.
I guess I'm coming across more harsh because I'm just trying to give it a fair shake, a fair critique, because that's what we're trying to do here. And I'm always very positive. And of course, I'm going to bring up I think I was even positive while I was critiquing it, right? I like to be like that. But yeah, I had to say the things that stuck out at me as a viewer, as a viewer named Steve Barnes, me. I do want to say we did have a viewer chime in. We finally had somebody chime in and they said a comment on our episode 1, because we've gotten a lot of plays on our episode 1 of 100 Years of Solitude here. And he just simply commented, this is my G is what he said. But G means this is my greatest ever. So I guess he was talking about the book. I was hoping he was talking about the podcast. Like, this is my greatest ever podcast. But yeah, the comparisons to Dark continue. This podcast, my podcast, Sweet Child of Time, saw a lot of success with 1899. That was the most popular show that among the podcasts, those are our most popular episodes when we did 1899. Our second most popular episodes were the ones we did of Dark, you and me. Those are we've gotten tons of listens on those. Our third most popular on Sweet Child of Time is 100 Years of Solitude. It's bypassed Wheel of Time and it's bypassed Time Bandits. We're getting more listens here than ever before. So I should have brought that up beforehand, but I wanted to let you know you're on board here. So congrats.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I think we're one of the few people recapping the show, so in a podcast format.
That helps.
There's a lot of people that have talked about the book.
Yes.
In a podcast, and
I've listened to those too. They're really good.
Mm-hmm. But I'm ready to get started, unless you have something else you want to discuss.
Oh, I could just go all day, Lindsay. But yeah, let's get started.
Okay, so episode 7 is entitled, as we said, Arcadio and the Liberal Paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And trigger warning, we're back to have suicide and self-harm in this evening's episode.
Yes.
So our episode begins with random images of young boys with weapons and red bandanas. Arcadio must be taking daguerreotypes again. Maybe not, but it looked like they were sitting for snapshots. It was very artistically set up.
Yeah, it was neat.
Meanwhile, Arcadio is getting dressed in an elaborate general's outfit. He has suited himself after Napoleon Bonaparte, and it's a good cosplay.
Yeah, he made this himself. Like, this is something he just threw together because he thought that's how a general should look.
Or maybe Amaranta made it because she was helping him get dressed.
According to the book, he made it himself. He threw together, it was like mop heads for his epaulets. And
wow, where did he learn to sew?
That's interesting you mentioned that. That's something that used to be a thing that it wasn't a womanly pursuit. It was something that everybody did. Fishermen would sew their nets, and people would sew up their sutures on the battlefield and stuff. And we've fallen out of favor. But Arcadio, he's back in the day. All these guys can sew. That's like second nature.
He's a liberal. He can sew. He can cook.
Yeah. And the best kind of liberal too, right? I mean,
yeah. So he has dressed the part, but we see in the images of his soldiers how informal this all is. These are young boys, not an army that he's leading.
Right. If you remember last episode, Macondo went and took all the knives and he sent them to the capital and was like, here in Macondo, they're having a civil war or whatever, and these are the knives they're using. Well, now, the reason Arcadio is arming everyone and he has this general getup is he took Aureliano's words too far. When Aureliano left, he said, look after the town. In fact, try, make it better than it ever has been. Mm-hmm. So he is taking that seriously to a fault. So he's arming all these kids and he's making the town look really militaristic and fierce. So from the conservatives' point of view, from the conservatives looking outside in, Macondo is like, well armed with an army and they're ready to battle. They got, guns everywhere. They got this general, they got this colonel that's out on the battlefield now. There's, all these weapons. They've taken over. The conservatives that were there last week have been taken over, and they know about that now. So they appear to be like the force of Colombia here, the liberal force of Colombia.
Well, if you're the type that likes looking for little mistakes or trivia during filming, one thing I noticed is that he's doing this rehearsal, the shooting rehearsal, the first one. You can see that everybody's missing their targets.
Oh, the scarecrow? Yeah.
And there's a young kid, the youngest person, the one that gets water at the bar. I can't remember what his name is.
That's
but you can see him sort of smiling at the person next to him when they're shooting. So I think that was a production mistake that he was like, isn't this fun? Where like, and also gun, the front of the gun like kind of falls down.
Oh,
so that might be a prop mistake as well. But
I didn't catch either one of those. That's interesting. But yeah, they weren't supposed to be smiling for sure. They're supposed to be fierce child soldiers.
Right. So in the town square, a group gathers to hear the latest updates. Rebecca and Jose Arcadio too are there, as well as Amaranta and Pietro. Amaranta grabs on extra tight to Pietro's arm. Arcadio has a unique interpretation of the request Aureliano has made to take care of the town. The people in Macondo think he looks ridiculous, and he's not getting much respect from anyone but his boy soldiers. But at the same time, people are clapping. They're kind of clapping for him because they're glad that the controlling conservatives have been sort of relegated and pushed down. But then Arcadio starts making demands. So all men are now required to be soldiers, and everyone has to wear a red bandana, showing that he's really no different than Magistrate Macondo, and everyone is to paint their house red. The people question these orders, but Caterino kind of stands up for him because of his respect for Aureliano.
Right. Yeah, this is the exact carbon copy of the Macondo thing that nobody liked. And now he's doing the same thing that nobody likes. So last episode, we saw Macondo, how conniving he was with the election and the lying. And so, like, it was down on conservatives last week. And this week is down on liberals because, Arcadio is like our head liberal in town, and like they're under liberal control. And what is he doing? He's making everybody like wear their armbands and show their support and paint their houses. And his demands are a little more comical and ridiculous in the book. He includes a bunch of other like silly demands, but in every case, he has some legitimate reason that he does these things that he doesn't share with anybody else. So it appears he's nothing but a dictator at this point, just shouting out orders to everyone. So not a good look.
Right. Well, we kind of see that he's being made a mockery of. Like, people are laughing at him. They think that he's ridiculous. So he's not being respected. He's just
tolerated.
Well, that's kind of why the priest and when the acolyte, when they're walking to the church, they say Arcadio's bark is worse than his bite. And, wearing this ridiculous general's outfit and looking like he's some kind of authority, but he's really not an authority of any kind. He hasn't been taught how to rule. I mean, I guess really most people aren't taught how to rule, but Aureliano's just put him in charge, and this is what being in charge means to him. He got it out of a book.
Yeah, he's got no frame of reference of what a leader is supposed to be because this town has been leaderless. And you may mention this, but I'm going to mention it first. He locks the priest up in a symbol of, in his mind, religion is part of the conservative party. So he doesn't want anybody worshiping, so he locks the church up, which is a pretty significant move. It's more harped in the book, too, where people are questioning this decision more than anything else.
So some questions I had about this is the soldiers lock him up. I wasn't clear if Arcadio had told them to do that or if they did that on their own. Just
he told them to.
Because they kind of laugh about it. They push it, but when they lock him up, at first you can be like, well, why was that so bad? But I'm not clear how long he was locked up for. And if he had food or if he was just like left to starve inside this church, if he wasn't able to get out,
communion wafers. That's all he's got.
The communal wine.
Yep.
Hopefully they brought him, maybe, at least the soldiers brought him food. I don't know.
I'm sure someone from the congregation checked on him. That's how churches are, right?
I don't know. There weren't a lot of people wandering around the streets anymore.
No, not at all.
So back at their house, Rebecca and Jose Arcadio are continuing to enjoy conjugal bliss. And Jose Arcadio, too, has become quite a workhorse. He starts seizing people's land. He visits a nearby banana farmer to question his ownership of the land. Jose Arcadio, too, makes the point that they took this land without paying. But we've been told that they founded the land together, being Jose Arcadio Buendia and all the people, that they found it together. But Jose Arcadio, too, comes up with this assertion that this couple has appropriated land that belonged to his family and never paid anybody anything. No one can prove anything different because Macondo has never been based on ownership. And this echoes the tradition of one person claiming ownership and then insisting people start paying them money.
Yeah, so the history is written by the victors. That's what it sounds like you just said. Yeah, this is another part that we don't get clear on, that the book clarifies a lot of his motivation here. And it's not just because he's being a jerk and, shaking people down for money. His reason for doing this was because when Jose Arcadio Buendia came to Macondo, everybody had equal houses, everybody had equal sunshine, equal access to the lake, and that has all been changed. So that's what Jose Arcadio is out doing in the book. He's making things right and putting the plots of land back the way they should be. And he's taken money from people as well, but his reasoning for like, I don't, the money thing was weird. It wasn't as much of a thing in the book about him like collecting taxes as it was about getting things back right, how they should be.
Yeah, we don't quite get the taxes set up yet, but he asks, who do you pay for this land?
Mm-hmm.
And the guy says, pay who? That a system of payment hasn't been set up. So yeah, maybe it's different in the book, but this looked an awful lot to me like, because he had the idea, Jose Arcadio too has just decided that, he's kind of like, I am the oldest son of the founder.
Yeah, that's what he says. Yeah.
Therefore, I'm the heir, and you've just taken land from my family. They also mentions the plague. We've been in this land since the plague happened, so they bring that back up again.
Sure.
That in case we've forgotten that happened, that there was this period of time where everybody forgot stuff. So it's possible that during the plague,
interesting,
people forgot who owned what, and then some people took advantage of that. So maybe Jose Arcadio too has a legitimate point, and he thinks, well, now some people seem to have more land than other people. So yes, that could be going on, but that wasn't clear to me in the show.
Yeah, me neither watching it. So when I read it, it made a lot more sense. I was more on his side in the book than the show. In the show, I thought he was kind of a jerk.
Yeah, well, me too.
Yeah.
Okay, meanwhile, Aureliano and his men come across a camp of conservatives. They have caught a liberal colonel named Carmona. This enrages Aureliano, and his group decides to intervene, but subtly. A few of the men enter the camp covertly so they can perhaps infiltrate and get this man out. But I didn't get the feeling they meant to fight a whole battle.
Right.
But the alarm bells get raised, and the conservatives start fighting against the liberals. And the conservatives are much better armed. So it's a slaughter. A lot of the liberals are wounded, and Colonel Carmona orders him to abandon ship for now. They need him as a hostage, and the liberals retreat. So he's trying to tell Aureliano, yes, I'm being held prisoner, but they're not going to kill me because they need me. So it's not worth it for you guys all to get killed to rescue me. So he encourages him. Well, he basically orders him. He says soldier at one point, and he's so he's calling him to task that now. He says now is not the day. Now is not the time. So they get beaten pretty badly, and a lot of his friends get wounded.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add because, I'm glad you brought up the reasoning that he took off and left the guy there. That makes that helps clarify that. But I don't really have anything else to add. I have a whole soliloquy about Aureliano towards the end, but we're going to check in with him a couple more times, right?
Yeah, it's a good. I'm glad to hear that because, I have some thoughts about Aureliano too. So after the group has kind of escaped or retreated, he decides to go alone to find help. There are too many men that have been wounded for them all to retreat safely. And he arrives. Actually, he doesn't fully want to retreat. He wants to retreat for the moment, but he wants to make sure to get that man out. I wasn't clear if they knew each other, if he had come to rescue him. The name isn't, that might be a thing that's answered in the book, but it's not a name that's dropped in my memory until this moment.
Correct. That's right. But he's a colonel now. So he's in touch with all the other colonels via carrier pigeon or however they communicate. And all the colonels are basically, buddies, and they all look out for each other and do what they can to help each other during their skirmishes.
Yeah. And he arrives at a house and asks for help. The man at the door immediately goes in for his rifle, but he gets distracted when his son comes to the door. So Aureliano is then able to escape.
Yeah, again, I don't really have much to say about these Aureliano scenes except for I have a whole big chunk of things to say at the end. So,
So back in, I'll go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I have a lot more to say about Arcadio and his pals back to Macondo.
Okay. Well, actually, before I go forward, it brings up an interesting point. You mentioned the other men and they communicating by carrier pigeons, and you were kind of half kidding, but at the same time, it does bring up the point that you said he's a colonel now. He sort of, and we remember he self-appointed himself as a colonel. It's not like he was delegated, the same as Arcadio was just named by Aureliano. So we don't actually know how any of these men that we're seeing, these colonels or maybe there's no generals, but they might have only colonels. they're all kind of, what do you call it? I don't know, sort of granola soldiers. They've probably been...
Yeah, guerrilla soldiers, you would call them, yeah.
Yeah, nobody's gotten formal training.
Correct.
So that's why they're a little scattershot and overwhelmed but they have a lot of heart. But, they've got heart is what
revolution.
they say.
They got the revolution on their
Yeah.
side. Yeah, that gives you a lot of momentum, actually.
Yeah.
Especially if the people of the streets agree with you. Like if you have the people on your side, you kind of like have a stronger foothold. And at this point, the conservatives have the power in government, but the people in the streets in Macondo and places like Macondo are like, yeah, turning liberal, and a bunch of ragtag kids with guns are going to kill our soldiers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he kind of became a colonel because this is a revolution. They're not a formal. This is like the rebellion in Star Wars. This is like he's like Luke Skywalker. Like, yeah, I'm a guy y'all should listen to probably, because even though I just started.
But at least Luke Skywalker got trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda.
Fair point. Yeah.
But Aureliano does have natural riz.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So back in Macondo, the town gathers at Caterina's to lament what's happening to their town, especially Jose Arcadio II's demand of payment for the last 10 years of farming. Caterina can't believe this. He thinks maybe they should try talking to Arcadio. And the group thinks that's a lost cause. But they kind of get back on board because the tequila might be withheld if you don't agree with Aureliano.
You mean Caterina, yeah.
Well, okay, but he says, if you don't respect Aureliano, maybe we disagree. So it's based on, like, the logic is that Caterina respects Aureliano. So if you're questioning Arcadio, you're questioning Aureliano. So therefore, we have a problem, and there may be no tequila.
Yeah. Well, I guess what this scene says to me is, like, nobody likes this guy Arcadio, but Caterina is here being our devil's advocate. He's our last devil's advocate we have for the time being.
And we see Caterina several times in this episode. So he's a key person in the town. He's an important person. He's the owner of this of the place where they all like to drink and have fun, and he's loyal to Aureliano. Yeah, that's where
musicians always show up there. Musician shows up a little bit later on. But we'll talk about that when we get to it.
So back at the town square, Arcadio has his soldiers do target practice, which we sort of already talked about this a little bit. It doesn't go well, and everyone laughs. Caterina arrives to talk to Arcadio about these taxes. Then Arcadio visits his sister and brother, Rebecca and Jose Arcadio II, to discuss this issue. He suggests they make what he's doing legal. No property has ever been registered, so now's the time to claim ownership of all of it. Of course, they expect a contribution to the government.
For a fee, that's right. And I'm going to correct you. You said he went there to visit Rebecca, his sister, and Jose Arcadio, who's not his brother. Jose Arcadio is his dad. We got to remember.
But he thinks...
He thinks he's his brother-in-law. That's right.
He's his brother-in-law, right. I mean, surely he knows, though, that that's Ursula and Jose Arcadio Buendia's son.
Yeah.
I don't know. He just hasn't. He's sort of dumb. I mean, I don't know. He hasn't. Maybe he thinks. I don't know does he know he's their grandson? I don't know. So back at the Buendia house, Pietro is playing with Aureliano Jose, and everyone's enjoying the daily paper together. They read updates about Aureliano's progress. Ursula and her husband actually hold hands for a little bit, but just then Visitacion faints. She's not looking well.
Looks like she might be taken care of by certain, like she was there taking care of them for a while, but now, the tables might have turned a little bit. Besides her fainting, did they show Ursula rushing to her aid and taking her to bed? I don't remember.
They show that just a little bit later. Here she just passes out, or it looks like they've got the floating table is still kind of floating around, and Visitacio knocks into the table. That's what I saw happen, is the table was floating and she's trying to walk around it, and then she sort of passes out. So Aureliano continues his excursion for help. He finds himself wandering in the same swamp that his parents once wandered in.
Oh, yeah. I like this.
and he begins to see visions. A woman with a large belly covered in a white sheet stained with blood flows by, a reminder of his love, Remedios. He next sees his father, a younger image of Jose Arcadio Buendia. They embrace, and he tells Aureliano that he never stopped feeling lost, confirming our understanding that Macondo was not intentional. And in real life, Aureliano faints.
Yes. And yeah, I love the fact that like when he meets when Aureliano meets Jose Arcadio Buendia, it's like the same place where he came upon the tail end of his group on the first episode when they thought they had found people, but it was just their own people. They were walking in a circle. And this is the exact same place that he has this vision. So I just thought it would be really neat if, back in the day when Jose Arcadio Buendia was young and he was with his group, that person he saw up ahead was Aureliano. It wasn't. It's not what it was, but that would have been neat if you there's somebody up ahead. Who is it? And then the person dissipates into the distance. But then later on, it's it's Aureliano. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
I like it though.
Oh, that'd be a great time travel moment.
That was what was going through my head at the time this scene was happening.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been somebody through the fog, and then I'm on board. I'm liking this theory.
Well, it's ours now because it didn't happen in the show, so now we can take it.
But what did you think about when he says that he never stopped feeling lost? I never told Ursula I never stopped feeling lost. Does that change at all the way that you see? I don't know. I feel like we've been sort of led. Now, you might have a different impression from the book, but Jose Arcadio Buendia he's tied to the chestnut tree still, and he's seen as insane. But before that, he was the town's founder. He was the one that everybody looked to, this wise person. And here he's saying, I've never stopped feeling lost. And we remember in the first episode when he finds this property, he was looking for something else completely different.
Right, that's right.
And didn't find it. And so then he has this vision and he kind of wakes up and he says, I've realized this is what I'm looking for all along. But here he's saying he never stopped feeling lost. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about all of that?
Yeah, I do. I believe that, as he was getting older in Macondo and after he settled down, started having kids, doing all that thing. And like you said, this is the peak of his time. He's the town leader and he's in peak shape. He's doing all his experiments, escapism, you might say. And maybe when all that stuff started to slow down and he started to get older and in retrospect, looking back on those times, he was I think I was just fooling myself that whole time. I was keeping myself busy with experiments and keeping myself busy with family. But, really there was this thing that was inside of me the whole time that is now more prominent. It was lesser, when I was at my peak, but it's kind of always been here. That's kind of how I took it.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. I think about, there's been some times in my life where I thought I was making all these deliberate choices, and now I see that, that was kind of a cop-out. And I think about college, I guess, just as name an example, is when I went to college, I got accepted by several colleges, but ended up deciding to go to Ball State. And I told myself it's because my sister needs me, my older sister who had a little boy, so I made my choice to go to college because of somebody else. And now I kind of see, on the one hand, yes, I did plan a lot of things. I did make a lot of choices in life, but sometimes I think, your choices were kind of random, as a matter of fact. You think you made all these choices, but you sort of, in a way, it was a coin toss. I moved to North Carolina. People always ask you, how'd you move up to North Carolina? And I'm I was offered a job that I was not qualified for. And I made the choice to accept that because I had nothing else going on. I mean, it's a choice, but at the same time, I could have said no and maybe made a more deliberate choice. But here I am. This is where I am in life. So not to necessarily regret it, but you can have one image of yourself and think, oh, you're making all these choices, but you really just realized you had no idea what was going on, and you were being sort of random at the time. You were doing the best at that time, probably.
Yeah, I can think of many examples in my own life too, which parallel exactly what you're saying. So, yeah, I think we got the gist of what he's trying to tell his son. We understand. Does Aureliano understand?
Yeah.
I don't know if he does.
I don't know. But you kind of, when people start seeing images, you start to think, are they okay? Aureliano's always had visions. So
this is normal for him. But at this time in the woods and he passes out, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, exactly. So Caterino has now received a letter asking for tax money from Arcadio, and it will be 15% of every drink sold. Sex workers have to turn over 20% of what they make on a job, and everybody else will pay 8%.
Yeah, this luxury tax is what I heard that as, because they put higher taxes on cigarettes, alcohol, things like that. Yep.
Arcadio enters looking happy. He's the only one. Everybody else is pretty darn miserable. And they had dropped in the conversation that he's probably going to use this money to build a big house. And he demands drinks. And when asked, will I be paying you, or are you going to be paying me, or will I be deducting this from the
15%?
Yeah. He says that, well, you're not paying me, you're paying for the war. So, yeah. The war.
I hate Arcadio. I hate
Arcadio. So then Arcadio wants music. And Caterino's brother, who's named Anibal, starts to sing something to make fun of Arcadio. Then he gets his trumpet. Arcadio doesn't like that song, so he gets his trumpet and plays a military song. Arcadio doesn't take kindly to this since everyone's laughing again. And Pilar is looking very uncomfortable. And when this continues, one of the soldiers shoots Anibal, and they all gather around him sobbing.
Yeah, this is awful. This is like Arcadio at the lowest moment we've ever seen him. And in fact, like in the book that you get into his head here, this is one of these moments that you do. And what he's thinking about is like all the disrespect that has happened in his life, people making fun of him for his big butt, being a bastard. And he decides, like everybody's laughing, he's like, I need to do something to make everybody respect me again. So he decides that like shooting this trumpet player is the way to get everybody's respect and to let them know that he means business. So this was like his statement to the town, like, don't laugh at me anymore or I'll shoot you, basically, because that's all the guy was doing, was just goofing. He was just playing a goofy military song, like, and it was mocking him, sure. I don't know. So this is the reason why, because he wants people to take him seriously as a military man.
Right. Well, I mean, that much is kind of obvious, but yeah, I think, to be fair, Arcadio has been through a lot of ridicule, but his way of handling things isn't always the best. I mean, this is pretty low. I don't know if I'm like, do I hate this part more than when he tried to, force himself on Pilar? I don't know. Both of those. I mean,
interesting.
Murder is bad, but so is like grabbing a woman and calling her a whore, so.
Thank you for reminding me about that. Do you remember when that happened and I said to you, that's weird that they made Arcadio do that because he didn't do that in the book. Well, he did do that in this chapter right around this time. So they messed up the time a little bit. But very soon after this occurs is when he does the thing with Pilar, and he basically what he did last episode, or maybe the episode before last.
Yeah.
So at this point in the book is when we get introduced to Santa, and we get caught up with her like all at once here, I think, like in the next couple scenes.
I mean, but that for me, I guess I don't know, maybe there's too much going on in this episode to put that in here. But I saw a connection because he wanted something and didn't get what he wanted, so he tried to force something to happen. Oh, yeah.
It made structural sense to like kind of give us these little hints of, his badness, whatever. Sweet Shot of Time is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the way we record Sweet Shot of Time. We hook up with our guests via video and we record it on audio. Recently, we've been doing video podcasts with the cast of Time Bandits. It's easy using Zencastr. You can record video or audio. You can also edit your podcast or your video via Zencastr. Join Zencastr using my promo code SweetChildOfTime, and you can get 30% off Zencastr. If you're ready to start your podcast, it's time to share your story. Share it with Zencastr. That promo code once again, SweetChildOfTime at Zencastr.com.
So Pilar runs to the military fortress and demands to speak to Arcadio. She's wearing a red skirt to reflect her obedience to the town's mandate. And she warns him that a woman will come to see him and give him advice. He should pay attention to that advice. Arcadio wants nothing to do with her, and she insists that nobody cares about him more than she.
I'm glad you reminded me about her vision about the woman coming to town, because we might see that later. We see that he's got a baby here, right? In this scene, he's got a daughter, and he hasn't named her yet. But yeah, at this point in the story, he's pretty far along. He's got a daughter, and his lady friend Santa is also I don't know if they say this in the show or not, but she's also pregnant with a child as well.
Correct. Aureliano wakes up in a room somewhere. A woman enters the room. It's a younger version of his mother. So he saw a vision of his father. Now he's seeing a vision of his mother, giving him water for his brow. And the vision clears, and he sees the woman who's really in front of him. She holds up her hands in a peace gesture, and he gets up to leave, but she suggests that they wait until dark. Don't leave yet. She wants to take him to meet somebody.
Right. Yep. Well, my notes, I kind of put this scene together with the next scene with them as well.
Right.
So I didn't really have anything to add to that scene that you painted for us there.
And she takes him to a place that looks an awful lot like Caterino's.
Yeah.
A man there, a man there recognizes his name. He tells them about Colonel Carmona and his wounded men. And there he meets Colonel Gregorio Stevenson. So rescue has come. He's found the help. They go to find Aureliano's men, and everybody's still there except for Visbal, who has died. And they buried him and marked his grave with a cross. Aureliano is more determined than ever to topple the current government. And he gives a rousing speech. Long live Colonel Buendia. This is the respect that Arcadio doesn't have.
Yeah, he gives them this renewed spirit and vigor. And yeah, I think this is a good time to let you know how he's being handled in the book, because this is how this chapter starts out. And there's a couple spoilers in here, so I'm not going to read everything. But they say Colonel Aureliano Buendia organized 32 armed uprisings, and he lost them all. Next part's a spoiler. He survived 14 attempts on his life, 73 ambushes, and that's a spoiler too. He lived through a dose of strychnine in his coffee that was enough to kill a horse. He refused the Order of Merit, which the President of the Republic awarded him. He rose to be Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Forces, with jurisdiction and command from one border to the other, and he was the man most feared by the government of Colombia. He never let himself be photographed. He declined pension for his time, and everything else is a spoiler. So, he's the most dangerous man in Macondo. He is number one. If we were talking about back in the day, 9/11, we were all gung ho for Osama bin Laden. That's the reputation this guy has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this is. I don't know if you want to, maybe you said you had some thoughts about Aureliano and an ode to Aureliano or an homage to Aureliano.
Those were them. I wanted to let you know, his legend, the legend, because they show here pretty well, they have 30 guys saying, yay. But in the book, he's a much larger figure that has been a much more battle hardened person.
Well, I mean, I guess in my mind, when I watched this scene, I was comparing him with Arcadio. I was thinking about their approach and how things are different. Arcadio's dressed in this fancy outfit, and he's sort of being controlling, demanding obedience, telling people what they should do and what they should think. And, people are laughing at him. He's kind of a laughing stock. And he's saying he represents the Liberal Party, when in fact Aureliano is a truer representative, I think, of what the Liberal Party would be standing for, which is he talks a lot about freedom and, being free men. He's dressed like a peasant. We saw that before he left home. He took his fancy clothes off and dressed more like the newsies. He was direct delivering some papers. He's there in the trenches with the men, actually fighting alongside them as brothers and not staying safely in a fortress while everybody else does the dirty work. And he gives these speeches and people follow him. He has a natural charisma. Nobody's laughing at him. He naturally garners respect. So it just shows a good contrast between these two men. And like you said, the liberal paradise, and you mentioned, the liberals look bad. It's like, well, Arcadio looks bad, but is he the main level or is it Aureliano? So just some thoughts about this scene, because I thought it really showed how good Aureliano is at this. Maybe you did mention he lost I think you said he lost everything.
He lost every battle that he fought. Yes.
Poor Aureliano.
But he kept fighting. He never died. He never lost his spirit. But yeah, good call there. So like a good comparison between these two guys, because, they're two representatives of the Buendia family.
Yes. So they revisit the camp where the colonel's being held. Carmona, I think is his name, and they're successful this time. So they were successful here, Steve. So I don't know maybe it's not his battle. So while the battle's happening, Ursula is reading a letter that Aureliano sent her. He talks about being hungry, but nothing feeling more right. And they find the captured colonel and win. So,
Huzzah.
Yeah. So Ursula is actually, we find out that she's reading this letter to Visitacion.
Yeah.
And she feels sure she will never see her son again. Either a bullet or starvation will get him. Visitacion gives her a box and says that it won't be starvation. She's giving the last of her money, or it might be her life savings, to the Liberal Army. And she asks for one favor, which is to see Father Nicanor, which I forgot that was his name. I've been calling him the priest, the padre, but it's Father Nicanor.
He doesn't have a name either in my mind either. But yeah, Visitacion has some money too, because she has a business with Ursula and the family here, and they do the fish, they do the silver, they do the candy. So yeah, she's been saving up, and cool for her that she is giving it up for him.
And I'm glad to see Ursula kind of able to, at one point it felt like she was treating Visitacion like a servant. And, sort of treating her like a second-class citizen. But when she gets sick, Ursula's there to tend to her too.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is right. Yeah, I think it's become more and more clear to me. I always try to kind of defend them and say, oh, look, they're working with her instead of working for her. But, there is the fact that they did speak the Wayuu, and that she didn't like them speaking Wayuu. And like, we know with the yam soup and like Rebecca's past. So, and then with, Ursula's grappling with, wanting to be in the conservative party too. And this all kind of really ties in now with Visitacion and being a second-class citizen. I kind of, I'm becoming more and more agreeable about that fact that she may not be quite equal, maybe 3/4, but not quite equal.
Well, I mean, Ursula, to be fair to Ursula, she's sort of gotten humbled since, she was being a climber and trying to build a fancy house and all that. I mean, her husband's now tied to a tree and sitting there in dirt, and, it's hard to think too highly about yourself when that's going on, and her friends have stopped visiting, so she's had some changes in her life that she doesn't have all the social engagements that she had before, which is why Visitacion was being put in that position.
Sometimes it amazes me that like something just blows past my mind, and then like I don't realize it until you and I talk. Absolutely, Visitacion was a second-class citizen to Ursula, because it mentions in the book how now that Visitacion is needing to be taken care of, Ursula has to go to the chestnut tree and scoop up all of Jose Arcadio Buendia's poop, because normally that was Visitation's job to go out there, was to clean up the poop.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about in this chapter how now Ursula is out there like sprinkling like ash on top of the poop and then scooping it up or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, like cat litter, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're wondering about like his bathroom habits, there you go.
There you go. So Ursula goes to fulfill this request to see Father Nicanor and is horrified to find the father locked behind the church doors.
Yeah.
And she also just finds the town very depressed. She goes marching like a mad woman to find Arcadio when she finds out this is his doing. The soldiers try to shoo her away, but none of them dare to stop her. And
Nope.
This is great. And Arcadio has some strong women on his side. I mean, Pilar visited him. She wasn't able to get past the wall, but she was able to speak to him. But then when Ursula shows up, they try to stop her, and she's like, "Don't you dare put your hands on me!" And they let her through. I mean, this woman she's powerful.
Yeah, she's got a presence, and you don't want to mess with that. Even if you got a gun in your hand, you're like, okay, oh, whoop.
So she finds Arcadio and Santa Sofia, as well as her eldest son and Rebecca, dining on golden dishes. And she assures him, Arcadio, that Aureliano will surely have him shot when he finds out what Arcadio has done, that he killed the trumpet player. I can't remember his name now, but she calls him a disgrace, and she says it's one thing for people to fear you and another to respect.
Yeah, she ends up setting the priest free for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the one note that I have is the fact that, I mean, we see earlier how Arcadio had this agreement with Rebecca and Jose Arcadio about, collecting the taxes, and now they're here doing their thing. But yeah, it mentions in the book too how they have like a renewed like friendship or compadre, like where they hang out together a lot. That's kind of like his little gang. Even though they try to stay neutral when it comes to like fighting, he's definitely on his side when it comes to being like a tax collector, I suppose, in this story.
Yeah. That's actually a thing that I am a little unclear about and continue to be by the end of this episode, is exactly how they feel about what they're doing. Because in the scene when Arcadio visits Jose Arcadio too and says, "Hey, we can make this legal and you just have to give us some taxes," there's a look that passes between Rebecca and Jose Arcadio too, and I wasn't sure how to interpret that look, but one possible interpretation is that he's not quite sure this is right, that it's right for him to claim ownership of all this land and make people pay his taxes, but since the opportunity presents itself, he's going to allow it to happen. You could call that the bystander experience, where he's not quite a bystander, but Arcadio says, "Oh, well, you were trying to get this property. Let's just make it legal." But do they feel like, I'm not sure I like what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway?
That's the same way I felt too. I took it the exact same way. It was kind of like a reservation kind of thing, or reserved, whatever. So like 100% of us agree. So I think that is what what the intention is there. It's kind of like reluctance.
Right. So Pietro continues his efforts to woo Amaranta, and he talks to her about showing her Italy. And Aureliano Jose, by the way, deserves a family, and he proposes. Amaranta looks like she has been waiting for this moment. She looks kind of happy and like she's ready for him to ask her. And she holds the ring, and it's in her grasp, but then she turns him down and says, "I won't marry you, not this coming month or year or ever. And if you really love me, don't come back."
That's pretty harsh and definitive and out of nowhere. Because, they've been courting like a love up until this time. He's been hanging out with her. I think every Tuesday he comes around is what they said. And that continues. And in the book, this is exactly how it goes down. And there's really no in your head with Amaranta. So I think it's like up to us to interpret why she said that and why she turned so quickly. And my interpretation is that she doesn't Like he's finally here proposing to her, but she's remembering that he was proposed to Rebecca first. And I think that she is feeling second best, and she doesn't want to be second best. And if she marries him, then she'll always be second best. So I think maybe she wants to be first best to somebody else. That's my interpretation.
Well, I'll tell you what AI told me, Steve.
Please. What did the robot say?
Well, it had a couple of thoughts. So one was that she's still stuck in this forgiveness almost, that it's not really about Pietro, but more like Rebecca, that she just can't really let go of the fact that Rebecca betrayed her in this way and was going to marry Pietro. And somebody, I will tell you, this part is not from the AI, but somebody had talked about the fact that, Rebecca's got the indigenous blood in her, and whereas Amaranta's more the traditional Spanish blood, has the more white features, and that part of what she might be feeling is, well, how could he be attracted to this person that's of lesser caste than me? And there's some pride in there that she just can't get over, the fact that he would choose somebody that looks this way instead of her. So that there's some unforgiveness on her part towards Rebecca and towards Pietro, but that also to some extent she feels unworthy of love in general, and
maybe
she won't allow herself to have happiness, because we've seen that she's very tight-fisted, and when Rebecca was even masturbating, she was like clenching her fists, which is a very odd response. So what is she feeling there? Well, maybe she's thinking, well, why does she get these things and I don't? So again, it comes back to just jealousy, but I don't know if it's towards Pietro or Rebecca, but she just, she's just a bitter person.
I'm still standing by what I said before, but I have another addendum now. I have a tag on that now, thanks to what you just said. I think that when she looks at Pietro, she sees Rebecca. He reminds her of Rebecca. And so that is just negative connotation. So she doesn't want to be around that anymore. I've heard of, God forbid, a couple loses their child, and then they break up after that because they each remind each other of the child. Right. And so, I think it has more to do. I think it has to do with that.
Well, it's also interesting that she has this look on her face like she's happy. Oh, he's gonna do it now. I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
But then he says it doesn't have to be right away. And I wondered if that was the thing that, because it's almost like, oh, is this just going to be another situation with Rebecca where I get proposed, but then we're not going to be married for 10 years. Forget it,
Maybe. That's a good point. Could be. Because, he wants to take her to Italy, too, by the way. He wants to take her away. Doesn't want to, live there. Even though he's got his nice shop in Macondo there. He wants to go back home.
Yeah. So Pietro returns to his house in shock. He goes out in the streets singing a love song. He's doing a full-on John Cusack, say anything, jam box moment.
That's what my notes say too.
The whole town can hear him, and he's just pouring his heart out. Ursula visits Amaranta's room, dumbfounded at her daughter's stubbornness. And then she does come outside Ursula and shakes her head at Pietro, signifying that it's no good.
Yep.
So Pietro ends his life by cutting himself with a piano wire. And this mimics the actions that Amaranta took in despair for his love, because she once, cut herself because he was loving Rebecca. And so, but she doesn't do it enough to kill herself. So it's a very sad scene, Steve.
I told you, he's like my second favorite guy. My second favorite male character is Pietro. I like him a lot. So this was very upsetting to me. I don't like this ending for him. I wanted to see him, be the town music guy and teach the great grandkids and the great grandkids how to play the piano and stuff. So this a tragic ending. I don't have anything else to say other than I'm real bummed for the guy. I'm real bummed for Pete Davidson here.
You might think that, if anybody had a chance to escape, the curse of Macondo, it would be Pietro because he wasn't from there.
Right.
But he's chosen to stay. But I guess it's just too much for the poor guy to be rejected twice by two people. But yeah, I mean, he could have left and found somebody else, but this is just too much for him.
Let's look at his perspective. It's like, I mean, he's a rich kid coming from Italy, works for this company. He gets to do what he loves. He's got a lot to offer, comes and finds this beautiful woman, Rebecca, falls in love with her, and she dumps him like, nothing, like out of the blue for this super hot guy. So then, he's like, oh, well, I'm going to just stick around here with this family. This family's fun. He like hangs out for years after that. He watches Aureliano Jose grow up. And that's why he's like, yeah, I'll adopt him as my son. Like, I'll take him on as his father because I've been here all his life, coming around all this time. So he's putting all his time and effort and love and attention and everything into this family. And he got rejected twice. So from his perspective, it's like, what else can I do? Like, how could I be any better besides being better looking? Is that what it is? Is like, he has to be doubting himself because he's bringing his A game in every aspect and he's just getting rejected every time.
I mean, I will say, I think you're being a little over complimentary to Pietro because I still haven't forgiven him for dragging his feet about, how long he allowed the engagement to go on. Okay. So I still don't know from his perspective if it was more, I'm kind of wondering, okay, did he really love Rebecca or did he just couldn't believe the fact that a woman would dump him? Because he didn't seem that interested in actually marrying her. It was just, so yeah, he was a little more patient, but
I put in his head a little bit more, maybe, because I've read the book and I've heard about it. I've read about his motivation. And
okay, well, why did he drag his feet so long then? Why did he?
Because he wanted his mother to be at the wedding. His whole intention was he wanted to take her to Italy. And so Ursula was always on board with slowing down the wedding because she didn't want Amaranta to leave the house. So, like, his whole motivation was...
I'm talking about Rebecca. Let's go back to Rebecca.
That is what I'm talking about.
Yes, he did want... Well, you said Amaranta.
Okay,
but,
I misspoke.
his mom wasn't there initially, but he could have said, Mom, come. I want you to come so that I can get married. But it did. He was just like... We have the rest of our lives together. Who cares?
That's because Ursula was backing him with this whole church thing. And so he saw the logic in that because he comes from Italy. It's like a Catholic town. So he's a Catholic guy. So that makes total sense to him to want to get married in a church with his mom there. He's trying to do everything right. Like he's supposed to be like the exemplary example of somebody who marries into the family. And he just got rejected like at both turns.
Okay, well, we'll see. Maybe I'll read the book, and when I finish reading the book, I'll see. But
I'm not going to stand for this Pietro hate. I don't know. I'm not. I'm going to start a hashtag like campaign like. Love Pietro.
Get a T-shirt, Steve. Okay, so then, meanwhile, at his funeral. Sorry, I did go. What, skip this scene.
Exactly.
At his funeral, Amaranta walks to her house, and she's wearing her searing red dress, and she burns her hand on the stove. And we find out that Ursula abandons her forever. That's what the narration says. But what would you like to say, Steve?
I'd forgotten all about the funeral because that's another thing that Ursula insisted was that, he have a proper funeral. And Ursula, this is another reason that I'm like, Pietro, is because Ursula was like, that man was a saint and he came to this town. She gives this big speech about how great he is. And I was like, I was influenced by it, obviously. But she insists that he's buried right next to Melquiades because she says, Melquiades was a saint. And this boy was a saint, and he deserves to be buried next to, him in like a place of honor. So that's what happened with his body. He was buried there next to him. And Amaranta burning her hands here, I believe the reason she does it is because it's not clear in the book either. She just kind of does it. But it's also, they also talk a lot about how she doesn't really have any feelings about what happened. And her mom's not talking to her. So she decides to burn her hand on the oven to see if it can feel. That's a classic, rap lyric, I think. So she puts her hand on the stove to see if she can still feel pain. And she can. And then she shows her pain to her mom, and her mom is like, I don't care. Like, you caused all this yourself. Like, all the pain that you have created, you have brought it upon yourself. You have put your own hand on the stove. So you're not going to get any pity from me. So get out of here. So at that point, Ursula kicks her out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is what, to me, to my mind, this would support the theory that Amaranta doesn't, has self-hate, inside of her, that she wants to punish herself because she thinks she deserves all of the misery in the world.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, when they said Ursula abandons her forever, I wasn't clear what that meant, because it seems like they're still living in the same house, but yeah.
Does it?
I mean,
like at one point, like I think in a couple scenes here, Ursula makes a point saying, nobody's left. Everybody's gone except...
She does say that, but I'm like, where did she go?
Oh, I think in Bookland, she moved in, like Arcadio took her in, I believe.
That would make sense. So Arcadio's soldiers are much better at their job now.
They're getting there.
And they're actually shooting the dummy they're making their targets. And inside Caterino's, it's very sad. No customers, but nobody seems to have money for alcohol or sex. Caterino approaches Makote. He asks him to help. And Makote says, well, you got what you wanted, a liberal paradise. So, which is our title, of course. But this is a scene here where Caterino is, he talked to Arcadio. That didn't seem to actually work. So now he's going to the other person.
Yeah, the other lead, the opposing party, the leader of the Conservative Party. Like, maybe you can help me with this crazy liberal that's like, that shot my brother. That was like Caterino's brother is who got shot.
Yeah.
And, when Makote makes that sarcastic remark that, you got what you wanted, your liberal paradise. A soldier overhears him saying that, and the soldier reports those words to Arcadio. So, like, for whatever reason, those words are like his death warrant, like, because that pisses off like Arcadio to no end. That's like a sin just as bad as playing a trumpet in his face. I didn't think it was like that bad of a thing to say, but do you?
Well, no, it wasn't deserving of the response that it got. We do have one more scene before we get to that, though. But yeah, I don't know if it. I guess at this point, any complaint or any snide remark is now punishable.
Sure.
After seeing the people were laughing at Arcadio and playing military music, and that earned somebody getting shot. So
okay, more sarcasm.
Yeah. So Ursula is feeding Jose Arcadio Buendia. And I noticed, nobody's really grooming him anymore. So Ursula might be feeding him. She might be cleaning up his poop, putting cat litter on top of it. But she's not doing what he's not doing what Remedios was doing, which is like combing his beard, keeping the lights out. And she complains about their lot and the fact that nobody's there. And he lifts her chin and tries to smile at her. And she realizes he can understand what he's saying, that he's listening to her. And she tries to find the bright side. She thinks about Aureliano and what a great leader he's turned out to be, and about how Rebecca and Jose Arcadio, too, are happy in their marriage. And she's going to read the latest letter from Aureliano, but we don't see what it says. She looks very unhappy, though. But just then, Mrs. Makote runs in, breathless, asking Ursula for help.
Right. Yeah, it's like in the book, she's making up lies to tell him because she sees that like the things that she's saying are like getting a reaction from him. So she starts just like making up like a lot of, just fanciful lies. Like, oh, Rebecca and Jose Arcadio are so happy together. And
so she doesn't actually believe what she's saying.
Right. She's just like telling him nice things so that he'll smile and comfort him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that mirrors here in the show at all, but I just remember more of that scene from the book because it kind of stands out a little bit more reading it than watching it. I'm going to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So we then cut to the town square and see Pilar now wearing a blue skirt. She's no longer wearing the red skirt. I thought that was significant.
I didn't even notice. Okay.
Yeah, so she's gone back to wearing a different color. So I thought at this point she's no longer respecting him or caring what he has to say. So
okay. Yeah, fair.
In fact, many people have gone back to blue clothes. I saw at the beginning, a lot of them are wearing the blue skirts. So Arcadio has tied up Mr. Macondo and he's preparing to execute him. He's going to actually kill him right in front of his daughters.
Right.
And it's Ursula, once again, who steps in. She dares him to shoot her and begins to beat him with something, and she calls him a murderer. And he mentions that Aureliano entrusted him, and here she drops the bomb that Aureliano is dead.
Well, yeah, that's what she read like in the newspaper, apparently, right?
I thought she was reading a letter. So, yes, this was, obviously everybody's listened to the episode, watched the episode already, or hopefully they have. But, we find out that Aureliano is not dead. So
right. That's why I was confused. I was like, wait a second, he's not dead. I was like, should I be saying that he's alive? Is that a spoiler?
But whatever was in that letter, which we don't get to hear what's in that letter, leads her to believe that he is dead. And it does sort of take us back, because when I saw it, I was like, he's dead? And I thought, okay, maybe at this point he's already been in front of the firing squad, that, because we knew that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
But I also thought, okay, well, when he saw all those visions, was that really like he was dying? So I thought it was possible at the same time. So I didn't realize it wasn't true at the time. I was hoping it wasn't, but
yeah, we know that it's not. But nonetheless, like they think that's what she says right here. And yeah, you say that, she beats him with something. In the book here, she pulls the whip out again. Remember I told you she whipped Rebecca until Rebecca ate the yam soup?
Oh, okay.
Here, like she whips Arcadio in the town square in front of everybody. Mm-hmm. And everybody sees this. And so everybody gets the message. Ursula is in charge.
Yeah.
Like Arcadio has been beat down by his mom. His mom stopped the execution that he demanded to happen. And she even has like this brooch on her chest that kind of looks like a sheriff's star to me. Like she's got like that dark blue dress with like the sheriff's star.
And I really liked this scene. I thought like this, to me, this was when I was thinking about, when I was telling you why I really liked the episode, is the stakes. I thought this was a great scene for Ursula and made me like her better than I have in a long time. The fact that, even before, when she went into the church and lets the father out, and now here she is, everybody else is scared, and she's the only one that stands up for her son, and just is the one that nobody else has stepped in front of this man that, might be killed. And, I thought, oh gosh, when she tries to beat him, with how strongly he reacts to humiliation, surely this is, if Ursula's going to get shot, it's going to be right here, because he just doesn't know what else to do. But she's so impressive that he isn't able to stand up to her. And she says that everyone will paint the house the color they want, and Big Mama is watching. So I was thinking of Big Brother. Big Brother's watching. Big Mama is watching. She says, you better be on guard. If you do anything, try to extort anybody, then I will find out.
Yep. So yeah, all that stuff is at an end. This is Ursula's Macondo now. Kind of like it should have been. It's supposed to be the Buendia's town, and she's taken back over.
So the people all flock around Ursula and Macote's daughters and wife go to him, but also the friends that Ursula had that have sort of left her to her own devices come around and support her. And the town is unified in a way, again, under the banner of the Buendia family. But Ursula has no one to help her carry the load. And when she goes home, Jose Arcadio Buendia he hears his wife crying, But she doesn't go to him and cry to him. Maybe she doesn't. But he's awake. He's alert. We see that he's concerned about her, and he, hears her crying.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that, Lindsay.
Mm-hmm. So after all this awesome scene, which I love, and Steve has nothing to say about.
No, it's like nothing to say about it, but I just don't have anything really like
yeah.
Sorry.
Were you I mean, did you like this scene? You thought it was powerful? Like,
of course. Yeah, it definitely was. And I mean, I guess if I'm going to expound on it a little bit, she does have all the power in the town, but she is still weeping and she's still alone. And this is very much what Jose Arcadio Buendia was telling the vision of Aureliano, or the other way around. Mm-hmm. He was like, I've always been alone, or I've always felt alone, and Ursula is here. I mean, she retook the town. She's still alone.
Yep. Solitude. Good call, Steve.
Yeah.
So Arcadio sits at his desk, wondering if anyone is going to pay their taxes. And definitely not. They are not. Nope. Arcadio.
No one cares.
And a woman has arrived to see him. And
just like Pilar said.
Yeah, Pilar said there would be a woman coming. So the woman is actually a man dressed like a woman. And it's Colonel Gregorio Stevenson, who we met earlier, disguised to avoid being killed. And he has a message from Aureliano. He tells him that the conservative army is on the way, and resisting will lead to a massacre. Arcadio is no fool, or he's tired of looking like a fool. He knows his brother is dead, or he's just heard his brother is dead. So he dismisses the person as a traitor and a spy. Right. And Gregorio tries to show him a golden fish on a chain to prove he knows Aureliano. But Arcadio's like, dude, everybody has one of those chains or has one of those fish, so it doesn't prove anything.
Yeah, I mean, the guy has a point. He's like, I can't have any papers. There's nothing I can give to prove to you except for this fish. And unfortunately, he being Arcadio, he was given the news that Aurelia was dead. Now this guy, he doesn't trust him because he's saying he's alive, and then he's also saying you got to surrender to the conservatives when they come. So he doesn't trust that messaging. I can see why he doesn't trust it, but Pilar said, listen to the woman when she comes. And this is why I want to stress again. The conservatives think that Macondo is a stronghold. They think that the whole town is armed to the teeth and that they're like liberal warriors that have battle hardened. Therefore, they're going to send like the whole army, like Gary Oldman, everyone. They're sending everyone to Macondo to take the town down. That's why this guy is saying, whoa, you got to surrender when they get here because they're going to come down on you hard if you don't. So I wanted to make that point clear.
Yeah. And we know that it's not really a stronghold since the army is made up of like 12-year-olds.
Yeah, they're kids. They're nothing.
So in his fabulous home, Arcadio sits with his family, and his soldiers remarks on how the wimpy conservatives sent a woman as a spy. And that's when they hear people screaming. Turns out the spy was legit, but Arcadio doesn't follow the advice to surrender. He runs and keeps running, and it's a total slaughter of the town. They shoot down the church spire, killing the father, not the father, but the father's assistant or his acolyte. And Arcadio doesn't try to help anyone. Caterino is shot. Well, Ursula's going to survive because nothing can kill her. She ends up taking Amaranta in, and he might have surrendered. He was told to surrender. Yes. And they probably would have still killed him, but the town would have been safe. And unfortunately, he doesn't have the bravery for that. And again, I see a contrast between him and Aureliano. And Aureliano would have made the sacrifice for the rest of his town. But Arcadio is just like ready to hide and not reveal where he is. That would probably put a stop to the attack.
Yeah, and this is like if the listener here is like a fan of, action and explosions and buildings being destroyed, that you get it all here. They really do a great job with these explosions. And like I say, they went past my head. I don't appreciate them as much as I should. but they're there. I mean, I hope this show wins some awards for some of these, like some of this camera work and stunt stuff they're doing. It's it looks great. Just because this genre doesn't appeal to me doesn't mean it's not impressive.
Mm-hmm. So people start throwing fire on the soldiers. Right. And here comes Mark Wahlberg, ready to hunt Arcadio down. I felt like the guy, it's not really Mark Wahlberg, but I felt like
Who are you talking about?
The head soldier that comes on the horse.
Stevenson, okay, yeah.
No, not Stevenson, the conservative army captain. I thought he looked like Mark Wahlberg. Go back and look at it, Steve.
Okay, I will. I missed it. Sorry.
He's in the next episode, too.
Okay.
So he seeks help from Mr. Macondo, Arcadio does. And he's finally found by Amaranta. And he tries to take refuge in Ursula's home. But the captain is not taking no for an answer. She hates to leave him, but he at last does the right thing and surrenders. Ursula seems to have found some compassion for him at last, but he's taken by the squad to be executed, leaving his wife and daughter behind, and I guess an unborn baby, too.
Yeah, that's right. Before we get any further here, you say the townspeople are fighting back, and I wanted to point out that, like last episode, remember the women came out of the kitchen for the first time in their lives because they don't have any knives. And they're like, oh, there's politics happening in town.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, and I told you, like the women are now aware of what's going on. They're now aware of the war. Now we see the women like fighting back. We see like lots of action, lots of women fighting back the way they can and, being part of the battle. So I thought that was significant too. I assume that you caught that too, that there was women in the streets fighting too.
Well, I saw the women in the streets, but it looked to me like there were a lot of women fighting from the windows, like they were throwing things. And some of them just happened to, I felt like just some of them just happened to be outside. I mean, I wasn't, or like one person got caught, so the other woman went outside to try to, rescue her friend. Right.
They weren't being complacent in the kitchen, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. They were trying to fight back in the way that they could. But, there's not much they can do against this very well-equipped army that even has the kind of, machine guns. That,
they got machine guns? Yeah, tearing stuff down. And this dude, Colonel Stevenson, rips. Like when Arcadio like graciously goes and lets the guy free. Because he could have just let him die in the pits. Yeah. But he goes and lets him free. And the guy has 20 bullets. This is from the book, Colonel Stevenson. He alone is holding down the school that he's at, and like all the army is on him. But the army thinks that they're fighting a huge liberal force because he's such a good shot. He gets like every shot that he takes, he makes. He gets 20 kills in with every bullet, hitting someone. So like when they finally overtake him and they kill him and they find a man in a dress with a gold fish around his neck. And they're like, this is the force that we've been fighting against that took out like 50 of our men. It's like, we would never, I mean, they made a big deal about that in the book, how like, you look so innocuous and silly, but you're a huge war hero. And that's kind of like a, duality.
Yeah, they probably should have seen though that, I don't know, all they really needed to do. But at one point even you see Arcadio running right next to the conservative soldiers and none of them tried to grab him. So that was kind of weird.
That was very weird. I thought so too.
I guess like overall what kind of struck me though is that at any point I'm wondering, maybe this isn't the case, but at any point if Arcadio had just surrendered, I feel like this destruction didn't need to happen.
Exactly. That's right. And you've already said that, he met up with Ursula and Amaranta and that he's surrendered. You've already gotten to that point. So I can safely say now, we get into Ursula and Arcadio's heads a lot here. And Ursula goes through this whole rigmarole of remembering every bad thing that she's ever done to Arcadio, every slight she's given him, every time somebody else has done something and she never stuck up for him. She remembers Melquiades and Aureliano were the only two people that seemed to care about him. And she all of a sudden like just got this huge burst of like empathy or whatever for him. And she just, she got full of love. She loves Arcadio now. So like for her in this scene, like he has become like her son finally. So that is what's happening in her head right now.
It was quite a quick changeover. But yeah. It's your family. If somebody comes after your family, you're going to stand up for them, or that seems to be the general thing that happens. It was nice to see that, although you're wondering, does Arcadio deserve it? But, it's not about deserve when it comes to family.
Yeah, and the whole book, like that's what they try to do too, is like they're trying to convince you, the reader, that, Arcadio is not, he lost himself for a while there, but he's really not so bad.
Yeah. Well, he finally does surrender, and he could have gone or tried to go into the house, and then his mom and sister and maybe his dad would have all been killed in that skirmish. So he doesn't. He stops hiding. He stops running finally. And so then we have our conclusion, which I thought was really interesting. They say that he has these 2 final hours where he thinks about his people, and he's not thinking about this sentimentally. He's thinking about it rationally, they say. That's not the word they use, but it's not like he's sitting there thinking, oh, like, I love this person and this person. But he realizes that he truly loves those he thought he hated the most. And he waves a goodbye to his adopted sister, and who he thinks of as a brother, kind of, and who's actually his dad. And he realizes he doesn't hate Ursula. So he says if the baby is a girl, it should be named Ursula. And if it's a boy, it should be named Jose Arcadio, not after his uncle, but his grandfather. But ironically, the person he's calling his uncle is actually his baby's grandfather.
Exactly. I love that too.
Which is crazy, even though I think, weren't you the one that said, or actually that I saw this line in the book. I looked it up online, and he doesn't actually say this line in the book exactly like it's in the show.
That's right. Yeah.
So they added that in there as a cool thing. So just a reminder that he dies not knowing who his father or mother are. And so this is another moment that reminded me of Dark, because he's like talking about the uncle is actually the grandfather, but you're actually not you're saying you don't want to name your baby after your grandfather because you're thinking of the person you think of as your grandfather, which is Jose Arcadio Buendia. So it's really interesting.
Joke's on you. You are naming him after your uncle. You don't know it.
Yeah.
So Arcadio, his last words were, if it's, name my daughter Ursula, because his daughter at this point is 9 months old, and name my unborn son Jose Arcadio Buendia. In his head, this is really funny. This is why I laughed. In the book, in his head, he thinks to himself right before he's shot, oh, wait, I want to name my daughter Remedios. And then he's shot. So that's like his last thought. I
wondered where Remedios came in there, because we know that's his last thought.
His last thought was, I want to name my daughter. Oh, crap, I forgot. It's like, I thought that was almost, it played out as comical in the book. It did not play out as comical in the show. But yeah, he also, because we know that, people consider like people born out of wedlock bastards. That's like a common thing that, especially back then. And that's what he says when he's shot. He says, you bastards, long live the Liberal Party. He calls them bastards instead.
Right. So to talk about this for a minute, about this whole, I love those I hated the most.
Oh, okay.
And so obviously he had a strong, I wouldn't think he would actually say he hated Ursula, but he had a strong, dislike of Ursula. But he realizes in this moment that he loves her, and he kind of sees like all that she did for him, and thinks, she was rough with him. She was, I don't know if you'd call it abusive, but she was just very kind of rejecting of him and not sort of embarrassed by him.
I would say unloving. I think
unloving.
She was an unloving mother.
So there's that. But then it almost insinuates, if you're paralleling that with Jose Arcadio, I was like, so is he saying that he doesn't like this uncle, quote unquote? Because, he's talking about that kind of who you hate, who you thought you hated, you love, and maybe vice versa. So he's in his mind wanting to name his baby after this man that's tied to a tree. I never saw that him as hating of his grandfather either, because after
me
all,
neither.
That's the one that brought him in. And this gets back to the question I was trying to introduce before, which is, how do Arcadio and Jose Arcadio too feel about each other? Now, Jose Arcadio knows Arcadio is his son, but he doesn't acknowledge it. And he also may feel like, I don't respect this person either. But does Arcadio in a way feel like, how does he feel about this uncle? I'm not clear about that. And I wondered if you had any insight from the book.
No, because the book does the same thing the show does. They exchange kind of like an awkward hug at the wedding. And, you see in the bar that Arcadio looks over and he kind of admires Jose Arcadio.
Right.
But he doesn't seem to have he's not overly admiring him with goo goo eyes. Mm-hmm. He's just kind of nods of approval. Mm-hmm. So it just seems to me that it's just super, super distant. There is no relationship. Jose Arcadio doesn't care that Arcadio is his son. He never laments that. Never really takes ownership of that, just kind of acknowledges it in both the show and the book.
Yeah. He doesn't seem to try to get to know him outside of this, we're now kind of business partners together. We know probably there might be some resentment about the fact that he has to pay his son taxes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting.
So for his perspective, but I'm just saying from Arcadio's perspective.
Yeah, there's no love there. And I think that's why he clarifies. Yeah. I think that's the only reason he clarifies. I want to name him.
Because he says Jose Arcadio. He doesn't say Jose Arcadio Buendia. He says just Jose Arcadio. So he's saying, but he's not saying, because I don't like that uncle, but he's just saying, I want to clarify that I'm naming it after my grandfather or my adopted father.
Yeah, I think there's an intended separation between the two of them, because there's absolutely zero relationship. And, we know that he's about to face a firing squad now. Have you already said that or no? Yeah, you did. Yeah. You bastards. Long live the Liberal Party.
No, I didn't say that. You said that. But yeah, okay, he gets shot.
He gets shot here. And Rebecca looks on, and it's not
like... They kind of wave at each other. He and Rebecca and Jose are... Well, she waves. Jose Arcadio, too, doesn't wave. But...
No, telling.
He doesn't seem to even... Yeah, it's like we haven't even ever seen him really try to get to know him. Nope. It's one thing to say, okay, I don't want to tell him I'm his dad, because that would, that make uncomfortable questions. But then he doesn't even really, doesn't really try to get to know him at all, which is interesting.
It's interesting because this is a TV show and these are characters, and we expect all the characters to have relationships with each other that we can see and that we can analyze. In reality, some fathers and sons could have zero relationship and zero love for each other and zero wonder or anything for another. And I am a living example of that. Because I think I've told you, I've said it on the podcast many times, I was adopted when I was 11. A reason I was adopted is because my biological real father is no longer part of my life. Never has been. And I've never been on a journey to seek him. He's never been on a journey to seek me. We just simply don't exist. And that's kind of how Arcadio and Jose Arcadio are. They both exist. They both have their lives, but they don't see anything in each other. And Jose Arcadio doesn't care that Arcadio is his kid and doesn't try to reach out, similar to my biological father, never tried to reach out. So, that is telling in itself, I think. So, these relationships exist. I know another guy that I work with that has children that he hasn't talked to in years and has no interest in talking to them. These things just simply happen. And because it's a show, we want to see something. We want to see a reunion, or we want to see Arcadio like, Dad. I don't know.
That's not exactly what I mean. I mean, I think that there's something. You might feel something about the person. It's different. You're saying you don't want anything to do with them. That's different, though, than...
No, it's an indifference. Completely indifference. Like, it's not like I hate him. I don't. I'm sure he doesn't hate me either. But there's just an indifference there.
Okay, well, I don't want to... I guess I would, like, query that, but I don't have enough... like, we'll do that off air.
I mean, yeah, it's personal, but, like, it's personal to me.
You just would think that I'm not necessarily looking for a reunion or dad in this show, but I would think that maybe Jose Arcadio would, if he had a chance to talk to him, he'd have a conversation. I mean, or he just at least try to get...
This is it.
Yeah, this is his chance, but he has nothing to say, nothing at all. Well, I mean, he did come to his house, and they got to meet each other through business.
Yeah, they were business partners. They collected taxes together. They high-fived probably occasionally. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Just forget it. I'm like, okay. I guess I'm just used to shows like Dark, where even the unknown, tries to talk to Trot when he meets him. He's like, even as awkward as that guy is, he's at least like, he's kind of like curious about who his son is.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, not these guys, these Buendias, but you said you've already watched the next episode. You like kind of let slip there that you've seen the next episode,
what?
huh?
Did I say that?
You did.
I don't think
you said that a certain character shows up in the next episode. So it was a very hidden clue that I picked up.
Well, I haven't watched the whole episode. I've browsed the episode.
Okay. Well, this right here is our penultimate, they call them. The episode before the last one where all the action happens, which it just did. We just saw the action. So 2 weeks from now, we're going to be wrapping it up with episode 8. I don't have the title of that episode in front of me, but it's going to be
flowers. Something about flowers.
Okay. It's going to be a Barnes burner. I know it because it's the one that's going to take us out of the season and lead us into the next season. So it'll give us and the viewers and the listeners here a chance to like read the book and catch up and get spoiled to what's going to happen in season 2.
Yeah. Who's going to die? I mean, who's going to die? That's all I want to know.
Well, everybody will live to 100, so it's fine. Jimmy Carter lived to 100. All of us will live to 100, so they'll be fine. 100 years of solitude. They'll all be there at the very end, with the exception of, let's see, who's died so far. Arcadio won't be there. Pietro won't be there. Melquiades, there you go.
And one other person died. Who was the first person that died? Was Melquiades. The second was...
Oh, Makote's dead now. He got shot in the head.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I forgot about him. Rest in peace.
And he's actually family. He's distant family. So, yeah, we got 4 deaths here. So they won't be joining us, but hopefully the rest of them will. Amaranta's still running around. She didn't get shot, did she?
Yeah, Amaranta's just running around with her burned hand.
That's right. She hasn't found love yet. Yeah, so we need to get those 2 lovers in the cemetery on the ball to make us some more Buendia children so we can... see what happens in season 2. Yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to go over before we exit, Lindsey?
No, it's been an exciting episode. I'm ready for the conclusion of this half.
All righty, let's do it. So yeah, until then, it's plug time. Please keep checking out Introvoid and listen to some back episodes of Sweet Child of Time. We have done Time Bandits in 1899 and Dark, and we're getting ready to do Wheel of Time in a few weeks here. That's going to start up season 3. I'll plug Lindsey's stuff over there at One of My Stories. I know that she's been doing some other podcasts. I know that you were just telling me you have a podcast where you and some other ladies of faith were doing like the top 10 of 2024. Last week you were telling me about that, and I was jealous because I wasn't part of the conversation, but I want to hear it. So that's going to come up on One of My Stories.
That, but it's Bros of Faith, Steve. It's 2 men, not ladies.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. I thought it was Ladies of Faith, but I see no gender. But yeah, we're wrapping it up here. Yeah. And did you have anything to plug that I missed out on, Lindsey?
No, I'm just glad to have the conversation and looking forward to the ending.
Alrighty, me too. So until then, always find water and shade and shoes. Bye, Lindsey.
Bye.